Redditors who have tried to hide on your cruise when it ended so that you could stay on the ship for the next round. How did that go? There was an episode of This American Life, I think, where a woman did this, but back in the day, like the 60s or early 70s. There were seating charts or something in the dining room so she couldn't sneak in to eat, and things that she assumed would be open most of night, like bars, weren't. She lived on a lot of bar garnishes and had to pretend she was drunk who kept passing out in the lounge. It was a lot less fun than she thought it would be, with very little sleep and cleaning herself up in public bathrooms while worrying she would be caught doing so at any time. She had to sneak back into her own country because she hadn't brought a passport. I read that link, and while it was interesting, there were also a few occasions where she came close to being possibly assaulted. Because one of her methods for fitting in involved being flirty with the single men on board, and more than once she had to extract herself from an overly touchy dude, and once she also woke up to a crew member with his hands down her top. Which makes you think, what happens to you if you bump into a real predator? You could go missing and no one would know where you are because you weren't really there. I worked for Carnival. We will find you. We know you're in the ship. And we all want you to get off so I can take a short nap before I have to do it all over again in a few hours. Amen to this. I worked for a small cruise ship company, less than 100 packs, and I would die a little inside every time people weren't packed the morning of departure and would slow everything down. Did they somehow forget that they needed to get off the boat that morning? Do those big ships do same-day turns, i.e. debarkation and embarkation the same day? My company did that, and apparently it's not the norm, at least in small cruise ships. Most of the other companies seem to have at least 24 hours between trips. I know you're planning something up. I can neither confirm nor deny these allegations. Nice try, FBI. I don't know if this counts, but on the last night of a cruise my friends and I got really drunk. Well, I don't know how the hell, but I ended up somewhere passengers shouldn't be, in a goddamn supply closet, I believe. The ship had docked and there was a 2-hour search for me. Still drunk, I couldn't find a way to get out of the room where the supply closet was, but the door was locked. The crew thought I was trying to sneak another ride, but after reviewing the cameras they clearly could tell I was nowhere near sober. So they let me go on my way with a good laugh. To this day I still don't remember making my way down there. That's kind of adorable somehow. I can imagine them all bring up the security footage like, what a jerk, we'll see how sneakily he planned this. Oh, well, oh wow, he's very drunk and very confused, isn't he? Not me, but a couple decided to hide to try get another week out of their holiday. This was while we were halfway through our holiday, so we heard it all. Dozens of announcements calling for them or anyone who's seen them were made throughout the day. Their rooms were searched and everything they owned in that room was seized, apparently. The ship left port late by about 90 minutes, but they were eventually found and escorted off the ship when the crew decided to check the identity of every passenger on board. All of their stuff was left in their room? How did they think they would get away with it? If you hide long enough without being seen, you'll be free to go. Source: GTA. Wow, I can actually kinda answer that. Okay, so it was not a cruise but a ferry. Also, we didn't hide on purpose. It was the ferry from Souris, Prince Edward Island to the Isles de la Madeleine, Quebec, Canada. A 12 hours ride. We embarked at 2 a.m. and found a very quiet spot to sleep. We slept through the landing and no one woke us up because no one actually saw us. When we woke up we saw the islands going away from us. Result: we spent 36 hours on that boat. You may enjoy a listen to the stowaway episode of the podcast Criminal. It's not someone who just didn't leave, but someone who plotted to go on a cruise without paying. It's a good listen. That was a good episode. I don't think it would work today though. And it sounded like she really didn't have a good time on the boat anyway, with no place to sleep and nothing but buffet snacks, not to mention constantly being worried about being found out. It is all electronic card swipe now, everyone monitored all the time. All of the japes and scrapes of being a stowaway, one step ahead of the steward, is in the past now. Sounds like it would be easier to just get a job there. That was the usual outcome when I got caught. Used to be in the USCG. We had this happen a few times in Miami. They were all escorted off the ship. Typically the police handled the situation, but if a stowaway was discovered while still in the 3 to 12 mile range, we would render assistance once they were apprehended by the onboard law enforcement. The problem here is that you only know about the unsuccessful stowaways, not the ones that manage to pull it off. Also, is keel hauling still an acceptable punishment for stowing away? I don't know if this counts, but my dad got locked in a toilet cubicle on a ferry to France and it took several people to find him. The toilet was right out of the way and you couldn't hear him yelling even right outside in the corridor because the doors were so massive. I guess he could have gone immediately back to England? Could have become a ship toilet hermit. Late to the party, but I can chime in and further add proof if needed. I worked for Carnival for 5 years, specifically in debarkation. Additionally, I worked for Disney Cruise Line and Princess Cruise Line. Here's what happens. We give you a card upon check-in and that card is scanned the minute you step on board. Additionally, it is scanned when you leave the ship for either complete debarkation or excursions. At the end of your cruise, debarkation starts around 7 a.m. Come 10 a.m. we receive a list of people who have not yet had their card scanned. It's impossible to get off the boat without getting your card scanned, unless you jump into the water, haha. Then a manhunt begins to get you guys off the ship so we can put a new 2200, 2600 people on it. We do not start boarding new passengers until every card from the previous voyage has been scanned. In my experience, nobody ever waits and tries to hide. If you do take a cruise, book a flight that's a little bit later in the morning and go with the latest checkout time you can. So many people aim for debarking around 7 o'clock to 9 a.m. Literally over 1,700 people will be waiting in lines that'll take well over an hour to get out of. Instead of waiting in line for the hour, stay on board and eat some breakfast, take some last-minute photos, and then when your time comes just leave, go through customs, and be on your merry way. I'm the one-stop Redditor for all cruising tips, haha. This sounds US specific though. Here in Sweden there are some really low-class party cruises on the Baltic Sea, called the fuck boats, where they don't scan anyone. And I guess there are all different levels in the world in between up to the luxury stuff. So not all cruises scan people. I was on a ship traveling from Portugal to China, we took a wrong turn somewhere, landed on a remote island, and now the captain's enslaving all the locals. Been doing this for a couple of years now. They slapped a name tag on me and now I work here. Hope they also took your bank account and post a monthly salary in there. Then in 20 to 30 years you walk out like it never even happened. Cool story, but could you get me some more ice? I am a stand-up comic who works on cruise ships 3 to 4 months out of the year. Guests who take forever to leave suck. Employees of the ship can't leave until every last guest has exited the vessel. So if a guest is taking their time to leave or hiding, they are potentially keeping over 100 employees from going home. And many of the employees are on the ship for like 8 months, so every second counts when they just want to get off and start heading home. Get the fuck off the boat. Ships tend to have really good tracking of their packs. There's security cameras everywhere and when you disembark they give the ship a really good walkthrough. All the passenger areas are easy to see through and have no hiding places, and if a PAX were to be in a crew area, it happened every now and then, we would notice immediately. I've never had passengers try to stow away, but I've definitely seen crew run away from the ship. Mostly happens in American ports. Personally, when I was working on ships I couldn't wait to get the fuck off them every time I saw land. Why people cruise to begin with is beyond my comprehension. A little different. I was going through a really hard bout with depression in 2012 and really had nothing going on in life besides an overnight job at a gym. My parents decided to do a family cruise in March as our Christmas present. I was actually planning on saying goodbye to my family at the end of the trip and just getting off at the last island and not getting back on. Then I found out the cruise company would alert local authorities that I didn't get back on. I wanted to just island skip for a while instead of backpacking through Europe to do some thinking and adventuring. I didn't want to end up in some shitty Caribbean jail. It is right they don't just leave without passengers, as they could be lost and stuck. What happens if they find you and you don't want to get back on board? I have no idea, but can't think what you would go to jail for. You'd be all on your own though if you couldn't get home. Cruises leave without passengers all the time. Their terminology is actually, the boat didn't leave you, you left us. They will let the authorities know you stuck around, but usually a passport gives you at least a 90-day visa, so for the immediate future you're just stuck with no plan to get home. It's usually people who got a little too adventurous or too drunk on their shore excursion. My friend did this. He can't handle his drink and we were on a mini cruises from Newcastle to Amsterdam. After a good few drinks he loses it. Rips a table from the wall and throws it away, took his top off as well as another friend's top and threw them overboard shouting, "We." He was quickly sent to the brig and had his passport confiscated, meaning he couldn't get back on the boat after our day in Amsterdam. So he tried to hide under the bed. According to his story he couldn't fit, so his feet were sticking out a bit and said he got caught straight away. They threw him off and we never seen him that day. Imaginably, when we got back on the boat to no friend under the bed, we were concerned. We chose his closest friend to call his dad to say we have lost your son LMAO, and his answer was, oh I know, we booked him a flight. Turns out he ventured off the boat in a panic, somehow managed to find a British embassy and explained his situation, not sure how, but they organized him to fly home without a passport. Every time I see him I ask him to tell me the story again for a laugh. While I won't rule it out as an impossibility nowadays, it would be extremely difficult. First, you're scanned on and off the ship, so they'd know you never got off. So now you're hiding on the ship. WTF are you going to do? You won't be able to get into or back into your room. You won't be able to eat or drink on some of the cruises since you'll need a valid key card or wristband. You'll be carrying all your stuff around, since you'll have nowhere to store it. You might make it to the first port without being caught, but then you'd probably want off, and when you get scanned off you're busted. I'd say it's 99.9% likely you spend your stowaway cruise in the ship's jail cell until you get back to home port.